The president made me do it. Faced with federal charges and possible prison time, the once diehard supporters who stormed the Capitol are now blaming President Trump for their actions. In a statement released by his attorney, Garrett Miller wrote the following to explain his part in the riots. He said, "I was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, 2021. Because I believed I was following the instructions of former President Trump, and he was my president and commander-in-chief. His statements also had me believing the election was stolen from him." CNN legal analyst Paul Callan joins me now. Okay, so explain what kind of defense this is and if it'll work, Paul.
Well, Brianna, it's kind of a desperation defense is what I would have to say. They're really saying, don't believe your lying eyes, because everything was depicted on videotape in terms of what these rioters and insurrectionists did at the Capitol that day. This particular lawyer is using the argument that Trump issued an order and his poorly educated, homeless client just followed the president's commands. Now, even if that were true, that would not be a defense to the criminal charges, because in a mob, a lot of times mobs follow the instructions of one criminal leading the mob. Now here, that criminal may in fact be the president. We'll have to see how this plays out. But it's not a valid defense if you follow somebody who's engaging in an illegal act. It's the just following orders defense, and it's never worked.
Okay, so it's never worked. Is this a public authority defense, or does it not fit that?
It's really not a defense at all. The attorney right now is using it in a bail hearing to try to say that his client is not a legitimate threat to the community, and that he acted inappropriately or maybe violently only in this rare circumstance involving the President of the United States, who he describes as his commander-in-chief, ordering him to attack the Capitol. So he's saying to the judge, listen, he's really not a threat to the community in general. He's not a risk, so it's okay to let him out on his own personal recognizance rather than keeping him jailed until the time of trial. I think you'll see a lot of the rioters using this argument to get lower bail or no bail at all when they're arraigned.
Does this, just this idea that this sort of thing is not even a defense, does that say anything about Democrats and their argument that President Trump is responsible for this as they proceed in an impeachment trial?
Well, ironically, I think, Brianna, you have the rioters here who are saying they were inspired by the president's words. Of course, the president's defense now is that, he never intended for this to happen, and he hedged his words in some respect by saying he wanted a peaceful demonstration. But here we see the actual people charged with this criminal activity saying they were inspired by the president and they would not have done it but for the president's order. So I think that gives a lot of strength to the Democrats' impeachment articles, which of course say that the president really orchestrated an attack on the Capitol of the United States.
I think it would be a bit of a wild card if Democrats certainly called some of these Trump supporters to testify. But is there any way that Democrats will use some of these claims here in these court filings to make their case in the impeachment trial?
Oh, yes, I think they most definitely will. And I have to say, Brianna, the more I watch the video, and more video is coming out because everybody in the world's got a camera, and hundreds of these rioters actually videotaped what they were doing and what others were doing. The best presentation of this impeachment is going to be using videotape to show that these rioters were acting at the behest of the president. They often say that they are acting on behalf of the president. They often reuse his words when they engaged in this attack on the Capitol building. So I think this will be a very, very strong piece of evidence for the managers of the impeachment to offer.
You don't expect Trump supporters to testify, though, right?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think their attorneys might be hoping that if they had particularly compelling evidence, that maybe Congress would intervene and try to offer some kind of an immunity deal in exchange for testimony. that would require cooperation from the Justice Department as well. So President Biden would have to go along with that. But I'd really be very surprised if there was any kind of a deal. They can make their case just by playing the videotape. And in truth, Trump had very little personal contact with any of these rioters other than giving what was an incendiary speech on January 6th.
Paul Callan, thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Always nice being with you.
Always wonderful to see you.